All right, let's get ready then. So, welcome everyone. My name is Dex. Thank you again for joining us again for another great podcast, the T2E podcast. For those that's been asking, what does T2E means? It basically means that's too easy. How we came up with that name, I said that for like another video. But thank you all again for coming in. If you're new, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification bell, give us a like, and thank you all again for for the support. So for this podcast today, I got someone that's great, someone that is that's making a name for himself in Valorant right now in the coaching world. Someone who has coached multiple teams that have gotten them to top 30. Someone that has beaten good teams and is continuing to make his name for himself and continue to make strides in the Valorant coaching scene. And this man today is Coach Xander. So welcome everyone. Welcome, Coach. Thank you for being here. How you doing? You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I've never been on one of these things, so
hey, look, just like I said, it's it's trust me, once you get into it, it'll start flowing for you. So so I just want you to go ahead and just introduce yourself. Tell us about about yourself and how you got into the Valorant scene and everything.
Yeah, I'm Coach Xander. I originally got like into coaching because I was going through I've always since I was young, I've always liked being busy. I like doing stuff. I don't like to sit around and not do stuff. So
Yeah.
I started with since high school, I was academics and just playing sports and stuff, and then did stuff a little bit of that in college, and then some things happened. Came back home, and then I was programming as a junior developer, and then COVID happened, and they kind of closed down our facility. Because of my previous times, like when I was younger, I had some headaches and things like that, so I didn't really want to be spending too much time programming anymore. So I wanted to change my career path. I liked management, I liked team building, stuff like that, and that's kind of where I got started. It's just based on my interest. I reached out to one of my friends, and he worked for like an organization. I didn't really know much about esports initially, so I was a little bit lost. I didn't really think you can make a career out of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I reached out to him. I was like, "Yo, what do you do in your free time?" He's like, "Oh, I'm part of this organization," and he does content creation. And they're talking about getting into the esports side of things. And I was like, "What do you mean esports side of things?" And he knew a little bit about my background. He was a good friend of mine at the time, and he's like, "Well, if you want to put a team together, we'd like to have a Valorant team." I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing about that. So I did a little bit of research. I saw that you can make a career out of it. I asked some questions, asked around, got to know some people, and then I went to the Valorant LFG. It was the first place I started. Okay. And I was trying to just find players that were better than me, that had maybe put more time, and either I could learn from them or I could watch film and try to help them. And we hosted tryouts. We had I don't know how many people. I spent a good chunk of time getting together that first roster. So we had probably 20. I want to say 20 or 30 people, and then we just kind of went through that list. And that's how I built my first roster. The org was like, "Yo, this is sick. We like what you're doing. We want you to be a part of us." So I started working for them.
Interesting. Okay, so my question is, why not start off as a player first and then go into coaching?
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, I had some concussions, basically. So I got them from football and wrestling, and so when I have to look at my crosshair and focus on cross replacement and things like that, if I have to for long periods of time over multiple games and things like that, I realized I had a lot of eye strain. So when I get a lot of eye strain, I feel sick. I had to take like medicine and stuff.
Oh man.
And so I don't know. I like watching film. Not only that, but I like coaching. I love like helping people. I think like one of the best parts is when you can help a player play better.
Hmm.
And then like when the games, like I've had players come back to me and tell me like, hey, after I was done coach, like you coached me, like the game just felt easier.
Hmm.
And like that's such like a rewarding feeling, because I mean that's how the game should feel. Like the easier you
Yeah.
can make the game for a player, the more enjoyable it is for the player, the more fun they have. It's just, yeah, it's nice to see people growth.
Okay, so that's good then. I can definitely see that because just speaking with you, before with us being, kind of close and everything, just seeing how you coach players and even helping me out sometimes, you have a great sense of the game. Probably better than some of a lot of these coaches I've seen just on on YouTube. So I can
Yeah,
definitely can see that and see the passion that you have for helping others. You don't do it for like money or selfish gain, but you do it just because you love it. So that's I find that really hard to find in coaches that actually really want to like actually put themselves to the side and really focus in and help players, achieve their dreams or their goals or, even just becoming just a little bit better at the game, even if it's not going pro, just seeing them, just seeing how you just enjoy helping a player just improve in just any aspects of the game is really, hard to find in coaches, So that's a blessing to see, you doing, doing God's work out here for these players.
yeah, no, absolutely. I love helping people. So like, even when I was doing like collegiate sports and stuff like that,
Hmm.
I was always either like a captain or a leader, or yeah, I ended up coaching like a university school for a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I always phrase it like, I don't want to be Michael Jordan. I want to be like Michael Jordan's coach. You know?
Okay, that's a
Uh,
good one. Okay,
yeah,
that's actually dope because everyone wants to be like Mike. We heard it all before, but no one ever talks about who helped him, who helped Mike be Mike. Who
yeah,
helped Michael Jordan be Michael Jordan. So that's good. That's a coaching mindset right there, man. That's a coaching
yeah.
mindset.
I think
So,
it's so rewarding. Like when watching MJ and when he had like the flu when he was playing,
mhm.
you just see like the passion that comes out of players and the drive, and seeing them, struggle and working with them and helping them through things,
Mhm.
like whether it's like on the field or off the field, like in the game, outside of the game. It's fun. It's a lot of fun to be a part of it.
So with you coaching and everything, how long have you been coaching?
So yeah, probably come January, it's been about 2 years.
Oh, okay, nice. Okay, two
Yeah.
years, 2 years. So with those 2 years of like experience that you have gained over the past 2 years and everything, what would you say like what is like your coaching philosophy when it comes to Valorant?
Oh, um, like what do you mean by that? Like what do I look for in players, or I guess.
More so like how do you like what how do you teach like what is like I guess I can't really say philosophy, but like what is like your belief of like how the game is like played? Like if you were to teach
Yeah.
players like I guess like the game of Valorant, how would you explain it to them? Like how would you teach them like from like your perspective? Like your beliefs of how the game is supposed to be played.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I guess to start with, like Valorant is kind of like, it's like a journey, right? In
Mm-hmm.
the start, like maybe you have a background in first person shooters, so like some of the hurdles you have to kind of jump are a little bit easier. Or sometimes like people come into Valorant just starting from scratch, just because like they saw their favorite Twitch streamer play it, or they saw a clip on TikTok or something, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that looked like fun, right? I remember like playing on my first game. I had like my college roommate. He ended up having like a buddy who was playing Rocket League, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yo, that's sick. Some cars flying in the air and chasing the ball and stuff, and so if you're ever like starting off in Valorant, it like from scratch, it's a long journey. It's a long process,
Mm-hmm.
and it's full of like it's kind of like a roller coaster where things are like feel really good and feel really easy, and then they kind of like come crashing down
Yeah.
and things suck and you hate it and you're like, people uninstall a game, and then a couple weeks later they're reinstalling it again. So I think one thing for me that kind of drags or like pulls me towards Valorant is I think the developers of Valorant, I think they do a relatively good job compared to most other like competitive esports games out there.
Mhm.
I think outside of their development team, I also think like graphically it's very visually appealing to
Mhm.
see Valorant being played. I think the skins are very attractive. I think the gameplay, the way the agents move, the way that it feels when you play the game.
Mhm.
Even like the maps are beautiful. The like I think it's just a very pretty game.
Very
So,
aesthetic, pretty game.
yeah,
Caught my
yeah, for
eye.
sure.
Definitely caught my eye. I was watching. Actually, I was watching. Was it? Was it? God. What's his name? Timmy. Not Timmy. God, the big heavy guy.
Oh, Tim the Tap Man.
Yeah, Tim the Tatman. Yeah, Tim the Tatman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching him just get like absolutely obliterated, and so like people would
Nope.
swing him, and one time he's just like, how's that even possible? I'd be like, you know what? Actually, this game looks pretty interesting. So yeah, I can definitely tell. Would you say this is more catered towards like more the younger kids versus like CS:GO is catered towards more like it's more appealing to like older.
Yeah, I feel that Valorant, relatively speaking, tends to go to like the younger generation for sure.
Yeah, we see a lot of 15, 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
Pro. He's just like, I wasn't doing that at 15, 16 years old. Nope. So it's definitely cool to see, and I used to see a lot of high school started to like invest in, esports, because I'm starting to see a lot of a lot of Florida high schools, Chicago high schools that I've seen, even some New York high schools over here competing and having VLRs and all this. I'm just like, wow. I'm like, man, times have changed. Definitely can say.
Well, it's definitely like growing a lot in like esports. Like I think maybe 5 years back, 10 years back, I remember like when Call of Duty was being a thing. So I used to watch. I think like I watched Minecraft and Call of Duty and everything. But you remember like Scumper Jumper or Scumpy from COD?
I do remember Scump.
So I was actually watching one of the like his story, I guess, and when he was like getting into esports, like esports wasn't a thing. They didn't have scholarships, or they didn't have jobs or careers or whatever. I mean, Scump was playing, I think he was playing basketball at the time or some sport, and he was like, "Yeah, I want to quit playing basketball and to go like pursue this career as like as a Call of Duty player." So I think like, and that whole thing panned out to develop into like some huge career. And now esports, there's like, I mean, kids are going to school on like scholarship, full rides and everything. Like that wasn't around. So I think even in high schools, like my high school, we didn't have an esports team. And now I think that like, I think most high schools, like it's weird if you don't have an esports team, or like it's not unheard of if teams are like developing in high school.
Yeah.
So I think just in terms of like esports genre, like everything is growing, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, it's really, really nice to see. I wish I had the opportunity when I was a kid. So I wanted to ask you this as well, as far as like, going back to what you said, working with players and developing players. What are some like approaches that you do with players to like help them improve as far as like teamwork or individual skills and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, because I think every time you work with someone, it's you have to identify the problem first. Like what is causing this person to not succeed, or what does this player want in order to feel like they're succeeding, right? Like sometimes I think as coaches it's hard, because there's a fine line between doing what you want and what you think is best, and then what is the reality of things. So for example, like let's say a player may feel like his aim is I don't know, he's like, oh, my aim sucks or something, right? And then you go down, you go talk to him and you say, hey, like it's not your, like, your crosshair placement is great, your flicking is amazing, whatever, right? Maybe just like the talent above all, but the problem is like the way he's approaching a fight might be not the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you talk to a player, sometimes they're not able to get that information back and be like, oh, okay, it's not my aim, it's the way I'm approaching things. They might not interpret it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're like, no, I'm convinced it's not my approach, it's my aim, and they're kind of like fixated and stuck on that.
Mm-hmm.
So as like a coach, sometimes it's like hard because you want to help this player. You think that this is like the best thing for them, but then the player may not, like, if he doesn't actually like work on that approach, it doesn't really help anything, right? So sometimes you have to take a step back and say like, okay, forget what I think is best for this guy. What question is he asking, and how can I help him improve? Because if he's asking about how to improve his aim, you can show him steps, whether it's aim labs or routine, a schedule, or whatever it may be, to help this guy improve this aim, to improve what he thinks is like most necessary for him. So yeah, that's usually how I would approach it: is figure out what the player wants, and then do what I can to help that player get better at the thing that he wants to get better at, which is like, sometimes hard.
I could definitely agree with that. With coaching, because I did coach football for a bit. Working with like players, I was a really good pass rusher playing football. So one of the things that I worked with was edge rushers and D linemen, tackles, nose guards, and teach them how to pass rush. And one of the things that they always said, like, oh man, it's just I don't have moves. But I'm sitting here like, dude, the moves are there. It's just your technique is off, is why the moves are not working. And so and they're so convinced of, no, it's just because I don't know what moves that I'm doing. I'm just like, no. So I can understand that. That's definitely you have players that are like fixated on one thing, or stubborn and don't want to listen. So that can definitely be hard as a coach to like try to like drill that into their head to get them to listen. But some players, like, I'm gonna be honest, I was one of the type players, I still am, is I have to get knocked on my ass basically for me to actually listen and be like, okay, coach was right. So I'm one of those type players that don't listen. It takes me to get my butt whooped a little bit for me to listen. So I mean, I can definitely see where players are stubborn, and it's definitely but you did the right approach. Sometimes you just have to sit back and be like, all right, you let them do it. And then eventually they'll come back and be like, okay, it's not that. Then let's try coach approach now, and then they'll understand. So I deal with players like that. I'm one of those type players. So
yeah, I think like I'll always like suggest. I'll be like, hey, this is what I think it is, but like the second I give that suggestion, you'll pretty much know, like almost instantly, like based on the response, like, oh, this guy is fixated. This guy's stuck saying that like it's this other reason, and then at that point you just like change your approach. But
so have you like, far as with the like past teams that you worked with, have you had like a IGL that was stuck like that, or like players that were fixated on like, no, this is how we should do it, and you just had to like sit back and pretty much tell them like, all right, go right ahead?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, building rosters in the tier 2 scene is like, or even like tier 3 or whatever you want to call it, but building teams in this scene is so difficult because people have so many different philosophies. Valorant is like still relatively new. I think I still consider it like a new game compared to like something that's been out for 10, 15 years, whatever. So there's no like perfect way to do it, and everyone thinks that their way is the best way. So whether it's an IGL, a duelist, a smokes, a senti, I mean, yeah, definitely at the end of the day, the best thing to do is just try to keep them together long enough to work on something and improve.
So going into like building your team, you said, so what is some like how do you build your team? Like, what do you look for in players as far as like their attributes, their pros and cons? Can they IGL? is the team chemistry there? You know, are they a team player? Is there anything that you specifically look for in players when it comes to building a roster?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about building rosters. I'm not a big fan of building rosters.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather like work with a roster that's been kind of like together for a while and then just like help them improve. Just because building a roster is a lot of work and teams don't always stick together forever.
Definitely did. We've seen that with EG.
Yeah,
EG won champs, and then boom, they're not even
yeah,
together no more. So yeah.
yeah. Things change so quickly, so it's always nicer to walk into something that's been together for a while. But when looking at like players, like there are definitely things that I am like, okay, this guy is going to be like, if I work with this guy long enough, then this guy is going to be something special. And I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I look for is, like, are they coachable? Like when I say something, are they actually going to like do it or try it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it can fail. I'm not perfect, but are they at least going to try it? That's like one thing, because like I said, some of them can be a little bit stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're stubborn, it's really hard to work with them. Um, are they disciplined? Sometimes I think players like they're coachable. You tell them they'll do something the right way, but then next practice or next game or whatever, they went back to their old habits, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, how well are they? And then it's kind of a hard thing to tell. I think it takes time to like break habits. Sometimes you need to. It's not like next week are they completely a brand new player or something like that, but
Mm-hmm.
are you seeing like the progression? Are they like getting better at something? Are they putting the time? Are they disciplined enough to work on something? So I think for me, it's like coachability, discipline, and then the last one is like commitment. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's probably one of the hardest ones for me to like quantify, because I think people have a lot of things outside of Valorant,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it really difficult sometimes. Whether it's a lot of players nowadays, they're playing collegiate Valorant. So when you have one player that wants to play collegiate Valorant and then they also want to play on like a free agent roster, they have to choose between the two. And free agent
Mm-hmm.
rosters don't oftentimes give you money or give you, you know, something to
Mm-hmm.
incentivize you to be focused on that over another thing. Whereas some like schools are giving you like scholarships and stuff like that. Where like, hey, well,
Yeah.
we don't have a better team than the free agent roster, but our team, you're going to be able to go to school and get an education and this and that. And so there's things outside of Valorant that sometimes make it hard to tell
Mm-hmm.
whether a player is even able to make the commitment or wants to make the commitment. Sometimes like it can be difficult. Um, I mean, I think trying to do your best to work around their schedules, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
I've woken up at some crazy times in the morning or gone to bed at like some crazy times at night. But um, if a player's committed, I'll make the time for it.
That's good to hear because that's good that you actually work. Try to work around other your players' schedule and everything. Because some of them probably are in school, some of them probably work, some of them probably
Yeah,
have families. So it's everyone's chasing a dream. But I'm a big believer in if you want the dream to happen, you kind of have to sacrifice some things, whether that's sleep or family time sometimes, or even to be honest, I'll be honest, I miss a class or two, for some value.
bro.
No, I'm gonna be honest. I have missed class
Yeah,
to either get trialed by a team, or even we had a game during my class. I'm in school to get my master's, so all my classes in the evening. So I've like
yeah,
missed class to play in this game. So
yeah,
if you want to talk about commitment, I always say if you're serious about it, you'll make some sacrifices, especially if you want it real bad. Because I was actually listening to Kobe Bryant. I was watching a documentary of him actually yesterday, and he was talking about how everyone thinks he's a ball hog. Everyone thought he was a ball hog because he shoots pretty much
yeah,
the majority of the shots. And one thing that he said was he knew his like type of the players that he had on his team, the type of commitment level they were, like that they had to the game. Because he said he would see you when you come in at practice. Mind you, he's there hours before practice even starts, getting extra work in. And as his teammates come in when practice is starting, that's when they're coming in, and he's already worked out 2 hours before practice, maybe even 3, and he's the first one there and the last one to leave. And he sees he said, "I see when you come in, and I see when you leave," and that lets me know that I don't trust you, pretty much, of like for you to take that like final shot, because it was like at during that time there was no commitment to that during that time. So so I'm not saying to be selfish, but to a degree, I think that's what it takes sometimes, to get there, to like that demon one, or simple, or all that. I just think you have to. You have to sacrifice something to get where you want to go. And I mean, not even just for Valorant, but I feel like that's just in life in general. If you want to be successful, you got to put the time in for it. You gotta you gotta make sacrifices. So nothing comes easy when you're trying to be successful. So definitely agree with that on that. So just to shift things, a little bit, far as making sacrifices, if you don't mind telling us, what type of sacrifices have you made to, get where you at today?
Oh boy. I mean, when I was first starting coaching, I would wake up in the morning and I would watch, all the VODs and that I could. And there was, at the early stages of Valorant, there could be like several games being played. Like there could be maybe 15 games or 10 games or 5 games that happen that day. And, they could have like 3 games at once, which is all happening within like an hour slot. But that's like 3 hours of VODs for me, right? So sometimes there was more VODs that were recorded in a day than I could physically watch. But I would wake up. I would wake up. My bed was over there. I'd wake up, come to my PC. I would watch all the VODs that I could, and I'd do it for about basically until it got dark and I was ready to go to bed. So it was like 12. I don't know, like 12, 13, 14 hours or something like that. And I would have my notebook. I would write down in my Google Docs. I would keep track of what I saw that I liked, that I didn't like. So just from like that standpoint, there was a lot of time commitment. Then there was a time where I had like a job, but it was taking up like prac times. So I ended up like looking for a different job. I scheduled my pracs and everything around. I have a daughter, so I scheduled around her. So when I needed to spend time with her, I would cut out time for that versus, if we had, like, for example, if we had prac, I have to go out to go pick up my daughter from school. So I'd go out, pick my daughter to school, and then that day I'd move prac back an hour or whatever. There were times where when I was coaching 2 teams, one in Europe and one in North America, which is probably like the hardest time that I had in terms of like coaching wise. So they started practice on the weekends. They started practice as early as 4 a.m. So I'd get up about 3 a.m. Sometimes I would just pull the all-nighter, but I'd start about 4 a.m. We'd have prac for basically until about noon, so about 8 hours. And then at noon, it was like 7 p.m. their time, and they would be done. And then we would have like an hour or 2, and then I'd go right back into. So I'd usually get like lunch. I'd do what I needed to do, and then the next prac would start at like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, something like that. And so we would go from like 4 until like 8. So you could do the math, but it was a lot of like time commitment. A lot of things that friends wanted to go out and do stuff, or like some holidays I'd be up here. I'd be like, all right, like Thanksgiving's downstairs. I'll do my coaching for like 4 hours for a team, and then I'll go spend more time with my family afterwards. Or it was just a lot of like time commitment.
So
Probably the
curious,
biggest thing.
you have a daughter. Does she understand what dad is doing throughout the
Yeah.
day?
Yeah, so initially she was just kind of figuring out like what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh she'd oftentimes like play on like she would be playing games or finding I raised her in a way where she was able to be like independent, which I think was really important.
Mm-hmm.
So she'll be in her room working on like homework and like spelling her letters out or reading books, or she'll do coloring. I could anytime at any moment I could pull something up, you know. And she'll bring us some kind of project over and she'll share with me. And
Mhm.
when you're doing like scrims, I don't like to talk too much during scrims, so usually I'm muted, but I'll have my daughter like sit in my lap and we'll watch together. Or um yeah, so I guess like in the beginning she didn't really know what's going on, but as like time
Mhm.
went on, she kind of like came more accustomed to like, oh, this is like something that my dad has a passion for, and that she understands um that I love what I do and it makes me happy. So um
Well,
yeah.
hopefully, she get to see dad on the big stage one day. VCT. Coaching Sentinels or something. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Just saying.
I
She was
mean that
like,
would be nice.
I'm just
That'd be
saying.
nice.
It would be a crazy story. Your daughter, grew up and she's seeing seeing her dad working hard, and then boom,
Yeah.
just blows
Yeah,
up out of nowhere.
she likes to do one of the things where, like, like when kids are young, they'll like to do what their parents are doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she saw me on AIM Labs once, right? With little like balls or whatever.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, are you popping balloons?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of like that." So she wanted to come over and she started popping the balloons or whatever. And I told her how to hold the mouse, and she's clicking and having a good time. She's get pretty good.
Yeah. Hey, you might have a a male or something like that growing up, man. I'm just saying.
I'm putting together a
Just
roster.
hey, see if you compete in game changers someday, man, or even
Yeah,
possibly in VCT in the
oh, that'd be awesome.
dude. Hey,
Yeah,
she can be one of those. She got the talent. Go
yeah,
for it.
absolutely.
So so just I know you say you look at VODs and everything. So what tools do you use as far as like to keep VODs, or how you analyze certain VODs and stuff like that? What do you pretty much use to do that?
Um, like, are you asking like how I do my VOD reviews or my VODs, or are you asking just like about tools in general?
Like, well, I guess both, basically both.
Yeah. I think I've trial and error was the best way for me to learn like
Hmm.
when to use what and how to use it. Um, like when I look over VODs, a lot of times I spend a lot of time like looking at the mini map. I look
Hmm.
at if I'm not looking at a mini map, I'm looking about how someone's approaching a fight, what utility are they playing off of, like how
Hmm.
a lot of like the hows and why people are doing what they're doing. And then you kind of have to think about like overall conceptually, like, is this what this person is doing, is it smart? Which
Hmm.
is kind of a tough question. Um so I think over time you can start seeing like certain things that kind of are like triggers almost. So
Hmm.
for example, like depending like during like an execute, there's different approaches that you can use in executes.
Hmm.
There's different ways that you can take spaces, but they're like similar in like pattern, if that makes sense. So smokes go out, then your darts, then
Hmm.
your flashes, then your whatever, right? Your mollies come out, and this and that. And some teams have different approaches, so you kind of keep an eye on like, okay, this team likes to do their smokes and then their mollies and then their
Hmm.
darts and then their flashes, or um, like they, for example, on ascent there's different ways to take a main, there's different ways to take B main, different ways to
Hmm.
take mid. Like on CT side, what are teams prioritizing, how are they taking those fights? So just kind of being aware of like certain setups and how people are taking fights is usually like how I'll use VODs.
So has there been like I guess like recently now, like for instance like Ascent, where pretty much there is a set meta, set comp on that map. Have you seen anything recently where you'd be like, wait, I kind of like this. This is different from what people normally do on Ascent, or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so every time there's like an update, like I don't know, like the cipher changes with
Hmm.
the chips and things like that, it definitely like opens up questions. Like how much does this impact? Because you're
Hmm.
kind of like trying to weigh your pros and your cons. Obviously, when you're on a team, you want to take into consideration the comfortability first off,
Hmm.
because everything takes. I explain it like this: like if you have infinite time, you can do whatever, however, whenever you want, but we
Hmm.
don't have infinite time. We have limited time. So what is like the most efficient, most effective way to be able to get your team to a better spot?
Hmm.
Sometimes doing that, you don't always put like the strongest compositions together. You don't always put the best tools together. Um, but you want to, but like in like a theoretical, because maybe that thing takes too long to get a player to a certain spot, or
Hmm.
this player is uncomfortable, and to get that person comfortable it takes too much time.
Hmm.
So I would say whenever there's an update out, you take that aspect of like a player's comfortability into consideration, and then
Hmm.
you also take a look at what are people doing, what are some ideas that you can apply. So like with the cipher changes, I saw cipher on breeze, and
Hmm.
cipher on breeze, like it looks really, it's interesting, um because those cipher chips are a lot stronger. The
Hmm.
cameras are still viable. The cages are nice. So off meta comps, I don't mind playing off meta comps as
Hmm.
long as it makes sense,
Hmm.
right? I don't think it's smart to like just um pick a composition and be like, oh, I just picked this composition because everybody's like comfortable.
Hmm.
Because I think like when you're putting something together, right? Like you're putting some composition together, if it's not the meta, or if it's not something that someone's comfortable with, then it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to
Hmm.
take time to improve it.
Hmm.
So I think like I think it's tough.
Yeah.
It's definitely tough.
I mean, you said off meta comps. Are we talking like something like PRX, like Paper X here, where it's off meta, but I mean, does it make sense? Because we've seen some crazy
Yeah.
comps where it's just like, does that really make sense? But
I mean,
it
if it
works.
at the end of the day, like if you win, you win. So
Yeah.
how do you get there? There's different approaches, and for Paper X, they have a lot of experience outside of Valorant. Like a lot of the players were either ex CS:GO players, so they
Hmm.
had a lot of like they work really well with like in a free flow environment. Um, so that's not having like some of the standard structured ways that teams like Fnatic and things like that would play. It works for them,
Hmm.
and um, it's really hard to replicate though, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't suggest going that approach. I don't think it's like it's easy to replicate. It can go like it's hard to fix problems at times. It can just be a more difficult approach, I think, generally speaking, but
Hmm.
it works for them. So
So even like I forgot the comp that they ran on Ascent, but it wasn't your meta comp, and seeing, like how they used to harbor wall to like isolate certain angles to for the like something or Gene to take those 1v1s. I thought it was pretty nice to see that because they almost like used the wall to just isolate like a just one fight for one of those two to take. And
yeah,
and I thought that was pretty cool and pretty interesting. Like even using like a Raina flash with the Sky Flash, something
yeah.
that people never even thought of. And I'm just like, wait, that's actually interesting to actually, do. And it's like you said, Valorant is still, relatively, new, and it's still a lot of stuff to explore. It's still a lot of comps to see, and I'm gonna be honest, I'd love to hear your take on this. Do you think we're going to start seeing Yoru a little bit more, especially with people running the off meta comps now and want to be
Yeah.
creative? Are we going to start to see a little Yoru a little bit?
Yoru's interesting. His kit is very unique.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way that you can utilize some of his TPs. It can make him very threatening.
Mm-hmm.
I think it allows him to rotate very quickly. It allows him to put himself in spots very quickly and unpredictable. I think in Valorant, that's probably one of the strongest aspects of Valorant is to be unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it adds uncertainty to the opponents when they're trying to approach something. But like for example, if you're playing Ascent, we do like 90%, 99% of the teams out there will
Mm-hmm.
play like a standard comp, which makes it very like it's really hard to play that map well because it becomes people know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
They know when their drone like what does the drone mean at certain times and in certain ways, and like if they dart and they knife or they smoke or they flash or they throw an aggressive turret or something, like a lot of these things are no longer unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
um but you can kind of like as a defender plan around that and not have to play as reactively.
Mm-hmm.
And I think yeah, defense can be difficult when you're constantly playing reactively,
Mm-hmm.
but on a map like Ascent proactively. So I think Yoru, if we're talking about like maps that I think he's strongest at, I think Yoru on Breeze is probably his strongest map, just because the
Mm-hmm.
map is so large. Uh,
Yeah, I agree.
but yeah,
Even with bind, do you like him on bind as far as like being able to use the TPs a lot?
yeah. So Bind's interesting. I think the way that Yoru is used on Bind is like the TPs on Bind make it
Mm-hmm.
really hard for uh makes certain spots on the map something that you prioritize more than other spots.
Mm-hmm.
So the way the map plays, I think Yoru's playstyle or the way that he can TP and match pressure, or the way he can utilize some of his kit, I think can be very strong
Mm-hmm.
on a map like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. So even with that, do you think we might see, you know, with the cipher changes, with him having a little bit of a buff there, where he's pretty much if you so with certain trips, you put him in choke point, it's hard to get out. Do you think we'll see Sova come in just to be able to just eliminate the trips to make it easier, or would you start seeing people use like a raise nade to destroy it? Just what you think?
I think a Raisinade might be a little overkill to kill like a singular cipher trip,
Yeah.
but I think shock darts are going to be I mean, if a team's playing correctly, I think incorporating shock darts into an execute or into standard play is going to be very strong.
Mm-hmm. So even with that, like with the maybe Silva coming in, because I've seen where certain coaches and certain teams even are running Silva like on Sunset, and we've seen EG run Silva on Fraction when it was in, and it was just like what is this? That's
Yeah.
not that's not what we see. Would you say EG was kind of like already like ahead of the curve of that, or this is just they lucked up and pretty much found something?
Yeah. Well, I think EG is going through a rebuilding process, but I think uh, Sova has a very high skill potential.
Mm-hmm.
I think like his dart has, global presence. You have shock darts that are have very like have multiple use, especially when utilized with other utilities,
Mm-hmm.
such as like a Viper Molly and a shock dart, right? Like when you combo some of that utility, it can be very strong. So I think the shock darts have multiple uses, and I think the drone is probably one of the strongest pieces of utility right now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I think his kit is really strong, and his ult is also really good, depending on like the map and the way you utilize it. But um, yeah, I think in general, Sova is going to be a good option.
So who do you think is the strongest agent right now?
Strongest agent. Uh, I mean, that's a tough question. I think certain agents are stronger on certain maps than others,
Mm-hmm.
but I think if you're looking for a single agent that's the most versatile, probably like Sky or Omen, probably
Okay.
one of the two. I think
Skyrim.
Harbor's really strong, but I think Harbor is probably one of the stronger agents. I think there is certain things that he struggles with, so um, I probably have to go with either Sky or Omen.
Skyrim. Why so curious? Because most people, I thought you would have said the Viper, since
Yeah,
she's pretty much getting ran on.
yeah,
God knows on every dang map there is, but
yeah,
it's like we slowly see her take over Haven now, and then obviously on Breeze, and then we seen her living on Sunset and
yeah.
Ascent now. So I figure you would have went with the Viper. How come? How come Omen and Sky?
Um, I think Omen you can kind of like force on any map. So if you had to pick one, that's how I approached the question. Was like, if I had to pick one agent on any map, I think I would pick Omen on. I could if I wanted to pick Omen on almost like most maps.
Mm-hmm.
I don't compare to like Astra, Brim, or Harbor, and then Viper as a solo agent isn't very strong. I
Mm-hmm.
think when Viper is incorporated into like a team composition, it can be very strong.
Mm-hmm.
But I just incorporate it as a singular agent. Who's going like how would you draft or how like as a singular agent who is going to be the most viable on most maps?
Okay, that makes sense. Sky is pretty
Yeah,
much picked on because she can pretty much do pretty much anything like KO or Sova can do. Am I right
yeah,
on that? She's
yeah.
uh, pretty much better than both of them. So or
She's a
Fade
very
too.
strong hybrid, very strong hybrid agent. Can supply those flashes, can supply info, can clear angles without investing bodies with the dog, and
Mm-hmm.
it has a lot of potential, a lot of
Definitely,
strengths.
definitely do. So I want to go into just talking about the tier one scene. So what would you say what separates tier two from tier one? What is like
Mm.
what separates the two?
Yeah, I've never been in tier one, so I don't know for certain. But if I had to
Mhm.
guess, I think um, like in tier two, I think players are still getting accustomed and still getting comfortable on learning the ins and out of their agent.
Mhm.
So whether that means like I don't know, they know how to play KO, but their breach isn't the best, or
Mhm.
they their Sova is great, but their Fade's not the best, or their Jet is great, but their Raze isn't the best, or whatever, right? Like I
Mhm.
think they're getting more accustomed to all the agents for their roles
Mhm.
and being able to play it at a more competitive level. Whereas I think tier one, I don't think that's as much of a topic, not really a discussion.
Mhm.
Like obviously players have certain agents that they're much stronger on and more comfortable on, but I think in tier one you don't you work on like different topics
Mhm.
more so.
So
So
so would you say far as like would you say tier two would you say that you're still working like on the like on the fundamentals of like Valorant versus like tier one you pretty much is that's already established so you're like onto something completely different.
yeah, so I think like in tier one, like you're focused on creating a game plan and
Okay.
executing a game plan, and whether that's like, okay, I'm gonna create a game plan this week or next week to beat Fnatic, or what I'm gonna beat Loud or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm gonna create up with a game plan, a strategy, um, and we're gonna work on that to win. So maybe it's a map pool, and then out of that map pool, you talk about different ways you want to play Ascent, or different protocols you want to incorporate, or counters, or this and that, or another thing. But I
Mm-hmm.
think in tier one, most of the terms you're going to be competing in, it's going to be like your NSGs, your Nights Monthlies, your Fun Haver Invitational,
Mm-hmm.
your Liquid Opens, things like that, where a lot of times you don't know your opponents. So like the best thing to do is to understand how to play your agent more effectively. So
Mm-hmm.
like for example, when you're playing Raze, are you throwing your nade? Are you using your nade? Like,
Mm-hmm.
are you using your satchels? Are you like how do you use your Roomba? How are you using your utility? How are you taking fights?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of that. I mean, you could categorize that as fundamental. For
Okay.
sure.
Okay. Because I know you're eventually will hit tier one, and so when that happens, I was curious of how would you if you, let me ask you this. So let's put it like this: if let's say Fnatic came right today, like they got rid of the entire roster, which they probably wouldn't, never. That roster is insane. But let's just say
Yeah,
Fnatic is like, hey, look, coach, we're gonna give you this X amount of money, and we want you to put together a roster for us to compete in VCT.
yeah,
Now let's say everyone on the market is like open. Like there's like you have like every pro player that you want.
yeah,
What would be your dream squad that you would have? Like that would work for you.
yeah. This is a tough question. Like you can put the best players on each role
Mm-hmm.
in a team and still lose.
That is
Um,
true. That is true.
so there's a lot of that goes into like building a team. I think my experience, I don't know how certain players interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one dynamic that I'm gonna have to like discount because I'm just assuming that they're all nice to each other and they're all buddy buddy and no one hates each other and they all work perfectly together. Um, but I think I think Demon One's got to be on that roster for sure.
Okay.
I think
As your duelist though, right? I'm just as
um
or as
I
your
think it's yeah,
smokes.
I would consider Smokes. I think he's a
Mm,
great Jet player.
okay.
Um, but I think the Jet role might be a little oversaturated at the moment.
It,
Um,
yeah.
so I guess it like kind of depends because if it's like a raise meta, for example, I would bring on players like Drago. But if
Okay.
it's a like a Jet meta, you might look at something like Aspas. But if we don't know what the meta is, I think the best option would be probably like Durka
Okay.
as a duelist.
He can play pretty
Um,
much everything, so every
he's very
duelist.
versatile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, in terms as like an IGL, uh,
I'm curious about this one. This I'm curious about.
yeah, uh, I think Boaster is definitely up there.
Famous Boaster. Boaster,
Yeah,
if you watch this, he beat you at Jail, man. I'm just saying. That says
I
something.
like a lot of the logic that Boaster uses. I actually agree a lot with like the way that Fnatic runs their comps and the way that they play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they play from a standpoint where like we might not win every game, but we're gonna play the most consistently possible, and it's gonna give us the results, and we're gonna keep working towards that until like you're at that highest percentage of winning. Because then I think that's like the best thing you can do for an approach is
Mm-hmm.
you can just put yourself in the best chances of winning. So I think Boaster, I like the way he thinks. I like the way he understands the game.
So you're
Um,
already keeping two Fnatic players. Already.
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of Fnatic. They're one of the best teams. So in terms of Sentinel, it's gonna be Alpha here. So I'll take the
Okay.
three Fanatics.
Three Fanatics. Okay.
Um, and then Flashes is probably one of the hardest roles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't even know who I put at Flashes.
It is a hard world, but
I think that Flashes is like one of the most skillful roles. It's like one of the hardest. If you're looking for like you want to play like a hard, complicated role, it's got to be Flashes. Uh, um,
And you do have Chronicles. You got tens now that's on flashes.
Yeah, I wouldn't pick up Tens.
You
Chronicle is like he's talented for sure. He's one of the better flashers out there. Um,
who's the flashes for Loud? It's not less, right? He's there.
well,
Sensible.
it depends if you're playing with like Sky or not, because a lot of times they run like the Sky Harbor comp, and then you have like Kawazine,
Oh yeah.
but he's usually like infos.
Man, that's really not a lot of. Man,
Flashes is hard.
yeah, that's hard. I can't. To be honest, I
I'm
can't
gonna
even
just go
think
with
of
Chronicle because like I think chemistry wise this is gonna be the best.
four Fnatic players.
I'm sorry, Leo. I'm sorry.
4 Fnatic players, man.
Yeah, I would move Boaster to info, and then I would put, Demon 1 on Smokes, and then I would have Alpha Hair on Senti, Chronicle on Flashes, and then Dirk on.
So one NA player, one NA player. He gotta take one. Why Demon 1? Yeah. Why Demon
1? Honestly, I think EG has some very talented players and have players that are very strong in certain roles.
I forgot about Ethan. I forgot about him.
Yeah, but I think EG, like their players are tailored towards certain playstyles, so they can't really adapt very well. In my opinion, they have a lot of weaknesses. So like if you're looking for a complete player, I don't know if I would take most of EG. Outside of EG, the only other team in NA that I would like respectfully look at would be Loud. But I think even they have a lot of weaknesses as well. I think Loud has if you play them on their map pool, I think they're probably one of the best teams. But if they get played on maps where they're maybe not as comfortable or playing roles that are not comfortable roles basically, or comfortable agents on their roles, then I think Loud has their players also have a lot of weaknesses. So I try to put a team together that has the least amount of weaknesses. So I think it makes sense that I drafted like 4 players that are on one of the most consistent teams in the world.
that makes sense because I mean, even though they lost champs, even EG still says they're still the best team in the world. So I don't know. Do you think it was just one of those EG years where, like, one of those type teams years where, you know, it's like basically a Cinderella story where, you know, they start with that and all of a sudden they just get this huge momentum and now they can't be stopped.
Well, yeah. I think like they ended up like making some changes that ended up working out really well for them. For example, like Demon 1 played majority of the time was playing Smokes, but they ended up like moving Demon 1 to Duelist a couple times, and I think when they did that, they could see a lot more success. I think that Giacomo is a very, very strong Raze player, probably one of the best in the world on Raze, and I think the meta currently was a lot of Raze maps. I think outside of like Haven and Ascent, there just wasn't many other maps that you would really run Jet. Maybe like, I think, well, now there's like Breeze, and before that was Pearl. But majority of the maps were going to be Fracture based, like for example, Fracture or like Split, or most of these maps were going to be Raze based. So I think the meta complemented them, as well as like the changes that they made. A lot of like things kind of fell into place. Basically like right time, right place kind of thing.
Yeah. That I would definitely. I'm be honest. I had money on Fnatic win the whole thing. So I'm like 0 for 5 right now as far as like Valorant bets. So I'm just like not bet anymore on that. I've lost a lot of money, man, betting on Valorant. So I won't be doing that no more because I'm sick of these little Cinderella stories. I'm tired of them. I'm so tired.
Fnatic is a good team to bet on. So
I know I had a lot of money for it and they lost. I'm just like, Dude, if I would tell you how much I had on that game, you would look at me like, what the hell are you doing, bro? So I want to ask you this. So just moving like towards the future of Valorant, what do you see, where it's heading? What would you say where it's heading now or in the future?
I think the best thing to say is to kind of like be patient.
Mm-hmm.
I think esports takes time to grow. Like for example, League of Legends, they have like a whole tier two scene with finances and it's called like people can get paid and stuff like that. There's a tier two scene for League of Legends. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll someday hopefully there'll be a more establishing tier two scene for Valorant.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna take time for sure, but Riot is a pretty good company. They have pretty good developers. They understand how to make a successful esports scene.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're not perfect. Everyone has flaws, but I guess how do I see Valorant? Are you just gonna like develop wise or like
I guess
how do you see Valorant?
as far as like I guess like in the competitive side, like where do you see it like heading towards? Like far as like the competitive side of Valorant.
Like compositions or like I guess what specifically?
I guess like the game as a whole, like as a I guess like well we can start with like compositions. Like where do you see it like heading towards?
Um, well, I think for starters, I think Sentinels will probably be played a lot less. I think it'll probably have a lot more Viper comps. I
Mm-hmm.
think agents are going to be brought out, so it'll be exciting to see what they end up doing. Because I think Sova has a lot of potential to kind of break like what Sentinels do. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe if they have something like I don't know if you ever played like R6, like Rainbow Six.
Yes, I love me some
Do you know
Armor
like
Six.
yeah, do you know the agent or the character Jaeger?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So maybe like that
yeah.
would be interesting if they had something where they could like zap and take away mollies or they could take away shock darts or projectiles or something like that. I
Oh.
think that would be a cool addition to some of the things to make Sentinels a little bit stronger. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that would be nice because then right now like I feel
That's
it's
nice.
hard to balance trips and like alarm bots and mollies and everything because they either like they get value out of it because people run into them and then people just die, or they run into a molly setup and they get cooked or whatever, or it gets shock darted and no one like nothing happens,
Mm-hmm.
and the sentinel is basically useless. So I think right now sentinels are I think either a new agent needs to come out or that we're going to be played a lot less. Yeah, I think
So
the everything else is pretty much probably going to be similar to the same.
okay. So do you? I don't know if you saw. Did you see that it's been like a leak of them adding a new gun, like a new. I guess it's like a
Oh,
new
new
rifle.
weapon.
Yeah, a new weapon
Oh,
to the
is it like
game.
a sniper or something?
Yeah, it's like a semi-auto sniper, almost like it shoots like
Yeah.
3 bullets and then you have to like
Yeah.
cock it back or something like that. It's like a
Yeah.
semi-auto.
I hope they don't mess around with guns too much. They have a hard time balancing guns to begin with.
You remember the Ares meta when like
Yo.
that, bro? I could not play that game until they updated it. I was like, dude, there's no way that you're able to force after a loss of a
Yeah.
round. You're able to force every single round and
Yeah.
potentially win it because of an Ares rat. Literally,
Yeah. Well, even
literally.
like agents that interact with weapons, for example, like remember when Jet didn't have to like pop her dash, she could just instantly dash.
Oh yeah, those
So you
good
could have
days.
like Jet jump peeking with an op. They had to like change the whole mechanics of jump peeking. They had to change the
What?
dash. Yeah.
I didn't play during beta, so I didn't know about.
Yeah. So they added a lot of things to like stingers are still like you can still run like stingers on second round, or if you even if you lose on first round if you plant the bomb or something, right? It's like stingers, half armors is crazy, Ares are crazy at that time.
Oh my god.
Ops were crazy. Uh,
Yeah, I heard the ops were fast to reload, like really quick
yeah.
to cut back.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they had. I think the balancing. The one thing I worry about with Riot is hopefully they don't overwhelm themselves. I've seen them do it in Valorant, They have, I mean, not Valorant. They have done it in League. They have over 150 characters, and sometimes it is hard for them to create a solid balance because there's just a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things going on.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully in Valorant they don't overwhelm themselves with how many things that they either add or change or do.
I know they said, I guess like one of the head developers said that they're planning to add like 50 to 60 different like,
Yeah.
agents. I'm just like, holy crap, bro! Are we gonna have like another Jet 2.0? How creative can you get to because like some of these agents have to counter other agents, right? Like you have to
Yeah.
think about that. So like like for instance, like Breach can counter pretty much everyone with just a stun. He can stop a whole execute. Just from a stun, or like Sova with his information, he can use a whole drone as a body. Or a KO, he can knife someone and whole ability's
One of
gone.
the things that Riot did with League of Legends, which I would imagine they would do with Valorant, is they put like abilities in, or like they put abilities into like categories, right? And so like for
Mm.
example, there's like a hard stun, and then like a soft stun. There's like different, like there's like a silence. So they like use these words to group abilities.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, like I would assume that they're probably going to group things like a drone and like a skydog, and like that's going to be a category of different abilities, and it's like how the abilities interact with other abilities, if that makes sense.
Okay. I know where you coming from because I actually seen a YouTube video of a guy like pretty much. Well, he didn't take I guess the abilities, but he took the agents themselves and put them in like a category as far as I know we say like Silver's like a hard info character because he has a dart and a drone, and
Yeah,
he put those type agents like info like Fade and Silver were like info agents versus
sure.
Sky like Breach and KO were like your flash initiators
I
or
think it's
something
going
like
to be
that.
harder to do it like that though, because you're going to
Okay,
blend things a lot. Like, what do you consider Sky?
a hybrid,
Yeah,
yeah,
and what
pretty
happens
much.
when that line becomes grayer and it's like harder and harder to decide whether Sky is a flash or is she an info?
Yeah.
Like, what if you had a
Oh
smokes
yeah,
player that's
yeah.
like, what if you had a smokes player that ends up being an opper, all right? Or like you had a
Chamber. He's basically
whatever, right?
Jet. Yeah.
Like it's hard to, I think, like defining where a character falls into a category. There's gonna be a
Mm-hmm.
lot of hybrids.
Sheesh. Because I mean, like even like when Chamberlain was meta, he was basically what a semi-duelist. Basically, he can op, he can TP out, he can.
He was
He's,
pretty broken.
that man, I miss him. God, I miss that Chamber. God. So, but I want to ask
He
you one
would
more question,
TP across like half across the map,
dude.
right?
Dude, on like on fraction, even on bind, you should walk down long, and you can
Yeah.
just keep on walking and just keep walking and then like if you get one, you just TP all the way back to long and guard and
Yeah.
just and
You
just
remember
be chilling.
Icebox, like top of top yellow on
Yes,
Icebox? You could TP all the way back to Snowman.
yes.
Yeah, it's
It's
like, where'd that guy go? He killed one. I don't know where he is anymore.
it was insane. I say bring back 2 TPs. Just make the range smaller. That's literally all you
Yeah,
gotta do. Just make the range smaller, man.
I'd be okay with that if the way like if Chamber was only able to TP, but like he was still in a spot where he could be punished. I think that would be good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying. Think about it. Like he's like long or something, and he has to like TP into garden. You can have a whole damn dog or like brimstone. You can just rush this man, and if you don't have any help, I mean, he's
Yeah,
basically dead. So I mean, I don't know. I'm a sentinel. I miss my chamber, man.
yeah.
I definitely miss chamber. But I will say, have you ever thought about running him at his current state just because of like certain like I know with like when Lotus first came out, we seen like back when Ye was on C9 and he ran chamber on Lotus. Did
Yeah.
you like that idea or you wasn't really fond of it?
Um, Chambers is always going to be viable because he's really hard to deal with. I
Mm-hmm.
think um, like how viable is he compared to another agent is kind of like why I would decide one over the other, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think viable is still Chamber's still viable on. You can still run Chamber on Ascent. You can still run Chamber on Breeze. You can still run Chamber on. I mean, people run Chamber on Vine. It's common.
Yeah.
I don't think Chamber is like out of meta, but I think when you're comparing what Chamber gives you versus like something like KJ or uh, I mean, even nowadays, I think Cypher is going to be more viable.
Mm-hmm.
There's just there's more to give with KJ and Cypher than it is with Chamber. And I like to always compare to like League of Legends because it's like they're of the same
Like kind of like realm ish.
company, right?
Yeah.
They're both created by Riot. Maybe like the developers obviously don't like maybe work with each other necessarily, but I think carryover can definitely happen just by
Mm-hmm.
word of mouth or let's say we're at a Riot meeting and like I talk to you about my League of Legends stuff and you're like, oh, I like what he said, and then the Valorant side takes what the League of Legends does, and before you know it they're like similar things, right?
Mm-hmm.
um
I noticed someone similar, like Neon. They like it was Neon when Neon came out. Then it was like a version of Neon in League of Legends, and they basically, but
they
pretty
both
much do the same
shoot,
thing. Yeah,
they zap.
yeah, pretty much. They Palpatine
Yeah.
everyone. So pretty much. So before we get out of here, I gotta ask you one last question. This is something I normally do with everyone, but you as a coach, you in the tier 2 scene, hopefully we see you in tier 1. What advice do you have for individuals aspiring to pursue what you're doing?
To be a coach or to be a player?
To be a coach.
To be a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Have patience. Have a lot of patience. It's going to be a long journey. It's a
Mm-hmm.
long process. There's going to be a lot of frustrating and aggravating and days that you just want to rip your hair out or you want to go drink your problems away or whatever, right? You just it's hard. It's a hard process, but if you love what you do, it doesn't matter what it takes, you'll get there.
Oh, you hear it here first then. And so just to add on just a little bit to that, are there any like specific skills or experiences you believe that are crucial to be a successful coach?
Yeah, people skills,
Mm-hmm.
strategy, play strategy games, strategic, um, trial and error. Don't think you know it all, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of like personal characteristics that I think people should have if they're going to try to pursue it, and a lot of um, yeah, a lot of personal character things that I think are necessary.
All right. Well, guys, you heard it here. Coach Xander, thank you again for taking the time out to be here. I know you're a busy man. I know you're working on your roster right now actually, and I know you're a family man and everything like that. So thank you for taking the time out and spending this hour or so with me to answer some questions. I think you really brought in eyesight to coaches and players of how what coaches are looking for, what players should be doing, and just as a coach as yourself, just helping other coaches learn and like you said, be patient. It's a journey. It's a marathon, not a race. So thank you again. Guys, if you enjoyed this, you know what to do. Hopefully you guys learned something. Take what you said. I know I definitely did, especially as an expiring player myself. So make sure you take this information in, you utilize it, because we're here to help you and help you get better and reach your goals and dreams. So thank you all again. We appreciate you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.